couple of moments of genius, and of course one of them coming from their teenage prodigy.
The first half from Barcelona wasn't great, and I think some of what was going on around the stadium affected the whole feel of the match, and Espanyol benefited from that, and Barcelona just slowed down their possession. And so, who do you turn to in Barcelona when you need that difference-making moment? And in the past, it would have been Lewandowski. Maybe you could actually look at a guy like Rafinha, and maybe he's able to do something himself. But there's only one name in Barcelona of a player who can, by himself, create a chance and score a goal in the manner in which he did, and that's Lamine Yamal. And he has been that guy for Barcelona throughout the course of the season, but I would take it as far back as last year. Lamine Yamal started turning the corner, and we saw some of that in the Euros as well. And then the projection of his career all of a sudden is in an upward trending direction, and he just felt like he was about to explode. And explode he did. And today's goal was a good example of that. Takes it to the inside. Everybody knows that he's going to the inside. Everybody knows that he's going to look for his left foot, and still he's unstoppable. And still he finds side netting. Still he scores a great goal.
And the league is the ultimate definition of a champion, Shaq. Obviously, Champions League, one-off games. You know, maybe you can get through thanks to a decision, thanks to a bit of brilliance. But over 38 matches this season, Barcelona have been the better side.
Without question, and started this season so well. Listen, given everything we saw in the off-season, particularly with Real Madrid, if you said to Barcelona fans, you win a league title at the end of this season, but maybe that's it, they absolutely take it. If you had that conversation with Barcelona fans at the midway point of this domestic season, 19 games, Barcelona were 5 points behind Real Madrid. Again, they would have taken it. I don't think anybody saw this second half of the season coming from Real Madrid. And to Ali's point, the emergence of Lamine Yamal as that player for Barcelona, that player that can carry this great club on his shoulders. We knew he was talented. But at 17, you wondered if he was the player that could carry this franchise to glory. And again, you saw it in full evidence today. We are now gone well past the conversations around Lamine Yamal's importance to Barcelona, and it's firmly in the camp of, is he the best player on the planet right now? All evidence points to yes.
And it's easy to root for Lamine Yamal.
Yeah, that's it as well, isn't it? Like any sports, to see a teenage prodigy come through and take the world by storm as he has, as you say, you love it. How can you not love it?
Absolutely. And we always have conversations about Barcelona in the context as to what's going on at Real Madrid. And as talented as, say, Vini Jr. could be, it's not as easy to root for Vini Jr. It's not as easy to get behind him because he doesn't allow it to happen naturally. Whereas a guy like Lamine Yamal, he gets on the ball, he has a smile on his face. Every time you talk to him, it's something positive, it's something that you can build on, and you get excited about the player. And then you put a ball on his foot, and then you know something is about to happen. There is this quality about Lamine Yamal that is so likable, genuine.
And you don't like many people.
I barely like people at all. But I like Lamine Yamal. And it's hard not to. You have to try hard to find something about Lamine Yamal that you don't like. Outside of the choices that he has made in terms of his hair color, there is everything to love about Lamine Yamal. There is, again, his game is one thing, but it's the full package of Lamine Yamal that you can get behind, and you can get excited by the fact that he's 17 and there's going to be a whole lot more Lamine Yamal. The thought of him actually getting better is really, really scary.
And that's part of the big challenge. But challenge is the wrong word, around Lamine Yamal. You see him play, and his game is as mature, as polished, as complete as anybody else, as I mentioned, on the planet. But then you see him off the park, and you're reminded that he's a teenager. The blonde hair, the braces. and that's kind of, no, that's to your point. He's a teenager, yet nothing on the park makes you think that.
He also hasn't been jaded. He hasn't been. The game hasn't taken away from him.
Yeah.
The fans or the pressures of the game or the pressures of the business of the game hasn't taken that love of the game away from him. And it's easy to see when you watch him play that he looks as if he is out in the park with friends. It just happens that this park holds 60,000 people, and all the eyes of the world are on him, and he doesn't seem to mind.
Let's go pitch side, shall we? Luis and Sid are with us. They've been following everything that's been going on today. Boys, am I right in thinking that is it for celebrations now?
Well, we think so. we think so because obviously
we can't see them.
There was a bit of confrontation on the pitch, not very much of one, but a little bit of confrontation on the pitch. They got off pretty quickly. They're very well aware, of course, of what happened a couple of years ago. So there will be celebrations tomorrow on an open-top bus, but we think that's the end of it here at Cornellà.
Yeah, Luis, that seems to make sense. Does it kind of dilute the celebrations a little bit for the players?
Yeah, I tried to jump on the bouncing group that they were there, but they were not in the pitch for a long time. The water started going all around. They celebrated a little bit, but I think that everyone was in the same page. They wanted to go inside, not make a little bit more of a mess. There were sounds of some of the supporters jumping into the pitch. We saw the police just moving around. So I think the idea was to continue the celebration inside the dressing room. Probably there will be a big party tonight with all the players. And tomorrow, as Sid just mentioned, the parade around the city. So looking forward to see that, but we couldn't see much today.
Sid, how many times has Luis mentioned that he was the only one in the world that tipped Barcelona to win La Liga?
Do you know what? To be fair to Luis, the only person who's mentioned that so far is me. I was just thinking, by the way, does on the bus tomorrow, does Lamine Yamal get like a reduced fare for still being a kid? I mean, does he pay less than everyone else to get on board?
Yeah, Lewandowski gets the pensioner fee. Lamine Yamal gets a teenage fee.
Well, I mean, actually, Wojciech Szczesny really could do, because I think let me just pick up on this, by the way. This season started, and I am not making this up, with Wojciech Szczesny sitting on the beach in Marbella lighting up a cigarette. That's how this season started. It ends with him on the pitch here, a double winner. He is 17 years, 2 months older than Lamine Yamal. He was called out of retirement for one last job, and what a job it's been.
It just shows that goalkeeper's fitness really isn't that important, Chuck.
Put this players on the park quite clearly. We're fit even when we're on the beach.
Luis, it's interesting. We talked at length, didn't we, during the summer about the task in hand that Hansi Flick had to address. So much going on within the squad, so much going on outside as well with the financial issues as well. And we thought, well, Xavi couldn't do it. Someone who has got Barcelona DNA running through his whole body. How is Hansi Flick going to get something out of this side? He's going to get a tune from this team. I don't think there's any sort of way in which we can not give Flick his flowers today for what he's done over the last 10 months.
And totally agree 100% with you, Dan. I think that we've been praising a lot to Lamine Yamal. He's done an amazing job during the whole season because of his ability, his creativity. Pedri has become a massive and important key player in the middle of the park. Frank de Jong resurrection once again to the first team. But we've been talking a lot about some of the players. Lewandowski, of course, one of the top scorers of the season. But we haven't praised enough to Hansi Flick and his style of play. That sometimes you might agree with him. It's a little bit risky with that high line, with that intensity. But as you just mentioned, we never expected this team to perform the way that they did. Not only because in the beginning of the season they just surprised us. We saw a fantastic Barcelona scoring goals, being really, really aggressive going forward. But that low in the middle of the season, we thought, we knew that in the end they couldn't manage to get the consistency. And it hasn't been like this. They kind of reacted. The mentality of this team has been shown not only today or the game against Real Madrid, against Inter the Milan in the Champions League. We saw that it wasn't enough because they were exposed and they considered just too much, as it happened many times during the season. But that mentality of react, even though in the bad moments, I think that's what this team is all about. So a lot of things to improve, a big room to improve as well, because it's a very young talent team. But definitely we have to give so much credit to Hansi Flick. It's a style of play and the idea they just brought to Barcelona.
It might be worth adding something there, Dan, very briefly. And Luis is talking about what happened in Milan. And obviously this is a young team that can improve and that can learn. I don't know how much you noticed that in the 93rd minute, Lamine Yamal has a chance to run up the right wing. He's got a chance to go into the area and score. And he goes to the corner. And I am absolutely sure that Milan was on his mind at that point, that he's thinking, you know what? let's kill this. He went into the corner, he played a 1-2 with Pedri, they tried to keep the ball. Of course, then Fermin went and ruined it all for us by the next time they did attack, he thought, actually, no, I will shoot. And he scored. So it's okay.
What's interesting, I just want to go about Hansi Flick, Ali. You must have been in locker rooms. Yeah. Now, look, Hansi Flick is no rookie. Had massive success, obviously, in Germany with Bayern. Yet you've got somebody coming in after Xavi, who knew everything there is to know about Barcelona, doesn't even speak the language, doesn't have the connection with the club, has this idea that he wants to play this high line, but everybody is on board with it and seems to be on board with it really, really quickly. And that's got to be testament to his managerial skills, isn't it?
And what we thought would be a problem from Hansi Flick, the fact that, well, there's no Barcelona history in him.
Yeah.
He doesn't speak the language. How is he going to get his ideas across? Perhaps the fact that he's coming from the outside was a good thing for Hansi Flick. That he was not burdened by the story or by the history of the club and the history of former players at the club. That he comes in and says, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I want my players to do, and this is how we're going to do it. I have to imagine that the messages were very clear from the very beginning, very straightforward. And he said, yes, we're going to play with a high line, and the players went, huh? What? What do you mean? Yes, this is how we're going to play, and we're not going to change. There is no flexibility here. This is who we are, and we're going to press the ball together, and we're going to work for each other. The best thing that Hansi Flick did this year, outside of the fact that when he came in, he must have been very clear with his players, is when the roof was caving in, when the house was collapsing towards the end of December, and it felt like everything was getting away from Barcelona, and it felt like Real Madrid was getting control of La Liga, Hansi Flick stayed calmer than everybody else. Consistent. The message was consistent. The way that he talked to his players and about his players was consistent. There was no panic. And you could not have blamed him if indeed he had panic. Because what was once in control during the season, all of a sudden was all lost. And Real Madrid seemed to have all the momentum. And Barcelona, since the start of 2025, have been lights out. Whereas Real Madrid have had all sorts of issues with lack of consistency, there's been a consistency about Barcelona and what they have been. And you're not just consistent just because you show up and you play the same way. You're consistent because the messaging coming from the top is also consistent. It's also very sort of even. We're never getting too high. We're never getting too low. People think that that's not important. It is important. It counts. And it counts the most when things are going the wrong way. Because you look at your manager, and if he's freaking out, then the players are going to be freaking out. That didn't happen with Barcelona with Hansi Flick, and that, I think, was the difference for him in this season. Early part was going to be important, but being able to maintain a level of consistency in the way that he managed, I think translated into consistent results from this team in the second half of the season.
Shaka, you must have been in locker rooms where a new manager comes in with a new idea and people start whispering already. Like Stevie talks about first impression, how important that is, somebody new coming into the changing room. So not only do you have this foreigner coming in with this foreign idea of trying to play something completely different, but you get everybody on the same page.
It's hard almost to understand or to explain, in all honesty, because, well, it's great and probably easy to do that once, if you get off to a good start, get good results, which Barcelona did, but then, as Ali mentioned, things started to cave slightly. And that's when the issues arise. When results aren't going quite your way, when you see Real Madrid putting a little bit of distance between themselves and you, even though Real themselves aren't playing quite well, that's when you start to question the manager's methodologies, the messaging, what are we doing? But to Ali's point, and I have to say, I've never been in a dressing room that's kind of maintained that level of calm while chasing. But as Barcelona were. And let's be honest, Barcelona and Real Madrid are judged on one level, and that's what the other is doing, or what you're doing as compared to the other. So when you're chasing Real Madrid as Barca were, and yet everything just stays calm, nobody seems to question what Hansi Flick is doing, that's difficult for me to explain, because that's when most players, that's when you see the clique start to develop. That's when you start having issues, but somehow Barcelona didn't. Now, who takes the credit for that, I am not sure, but that's something that is certainly foreign to me and the dressing rooms I've been a part of.
And he also must have been able to massage the board.
Oh, yeah.
To be able, because even Xavi, legend of the club, was pushed out in the end because he said, well, you know, we got to be realistic about our expectations. And Laporta didn't like it.
No.
The board didn't like it. And I said, no. We're not going to accept this, even though we haven't done our job as a board, even though we're still having to have players injured so that we can be able to register this other player on the other side. And that's what happened this early on this season. Christensen had to be injured in order to register Dani Olmo. These are the sort of things that Barcelona and Hansi Flick was dealing with at the beginning of the season. And yet, you never heard from Laporta talking about Hansi Flick other than in a positive spin, in a positive image. I have to imagine that the way that he handled the board and that communication is also part of what makes this a huge coaching job by Hansi Flick, and an outstanding coaching job. It's not just what he did on the field. It's not just what he did in the locker room. It's also what he did in keeping people and pressures coming from above outside of the team, off the team, separated from the team. Allow me to coach this team. I'll deal with you, and we're all going to be happy.
Luis, does it help that it's a younger squad when you've got a manager asking you for these sort of things?
Yeah, I think so, Dan. I think in the end, when you got a young team that lack of experience and is eager to win trophies and to learn and to find a way of being successful, of course, they're going to be more able. When you start with the rotation, when you start, let's not forget, Gavi started with Xavi as one of the main players. Casado started as one of the main players who have been involved for quite a long time with this first team. Suddenly, they were relegated to wait for their opportunities. I'm not even calling to Ansu Fati, that arrived once again back to Barcelona with the options to play a lot of minutes, and he has to wait for their options. And all of them, every single time that they've been involved or they've been asked, they gave 120%, knowing the opportunities will be there and you have to get them. That only happens when you have a young team. You got 2-3 more experienced players. They start not liking to being on the bench and waiting for the opportunity. And when the opportunity arrives, it's not working. You got a rotten apple, and then start getting worse and worse. And I think that because they are young, because they are all willing to do whatever this manager is telling them to do, it's going to help a lot. Of course, results were there, so they are all backing up the result, backing up to the manager. But it was a lot easier to manage this dressing room instead of having 2, 3, 4 players who, with a little bit of ego, could have put this fantastic, successful year in danger.
There's an interesting little element here as well that's worth picking up on. We're talking about the young players and Hansi Flick's ability to get through to them. And you're talking about older players who've won it all, who can sometimes be problematic. Well, Barcelona have one very obvious example of that, and that's Robert Lewandowski. And of course, Hansi Flick is the coach that got the best ever seasons out of Robert Lewandowski. Hansi Flick is the coach that says to Laporta, I can get the best out of him again. He can play well again. At a time when Xavi is saying to the club, I'm not sure about this guy. Maybe we move this guy on. So there's this kind of quite nice little contradiction there, which is you've got this manager that's partly succeeded because he's got so many young players eager to learn, eager to listen to him. But he's partly being brought in because he is telling you at board level, at presidential level, I can make this work with Robert Lewandowski. I can make sure that we don't need to move this guy on. I can make sure that it happens. And of course, Lewandowski, not top scorer in La Liga because he's a couple behind Mbappe, but has had a brilliant goal-scoring season. There are still 1 or 2 doubts maybe about the press and some of the things that he does, but his relationship with Hansi Flick has been really good as well. So you've short-circuited, perhaps, the one player, you use the word rotten apple, the one player who potentially could have been that.
Sid, to one of my